Bungie had a lot to prove going into Destiny 2, the Edge of Fate. After a year marred by shock layoffs, the delay of its upcoming shooter, Marathon, following poor player feedback during betas, and less than favorable views about Destiny's monetization system, all eyes were on the studio to see where it would take its most beloved franchise next. 2024's Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape, was one of the series' most successful. It beautifully and coherently tied up a decade's worth of story, culminating in a tense and exciting battle against the biggest, baddest big bad that the universe had ever seen, the Witness. Naturally, following such a satisfying and full-circle conclusion, Destiny players were concerned about what a new saga would look like. The seasonal content that followed The Final Shape was lackluster at best, with major character deaths thrown in seemingly for the shock factor rather than meaningfully contributing to the narrative. As a result, player numbers plummeted to some of the lowest that Destiny 2 has ever seen. Bungie's best-in-class narrative team seemed to be floundering, so when I jumped into the Edge of Fate, I was skeptical, to say the least. I need not have worried. Well, not for the narrative aspect anyway. From a gameplay perspective, there are a lot of concerning stumbles, which gave me sour taste in my mouth after soloing the campaign at legendary difficulty. I came into the Edge of Fate hoping for a fresh start into my most beloved looter shooter. I was hooping like most Destiny players that Bungie, after years of promising that they are listening to the community, that they were actually listening towards it. I was secretly hoping for soft reboot of the franchise, starting in a brand location, vast open world location full of mystery, lore exploration. But what we got was a 14-mission campaign is monotonous at best, with the new reworked armor and gear systems. More on that later. While the best aspects of it are locked behind the now trademarked Destiny 2 grind. With your power level reset and the weapons in your vault effectively powerless, Bungie claimed this was to put everyone on an even footing ahead of the new saga. But in reality, it feels like years of work and thousands of hours of grinding for the best weapons was a pointless endeavor. The Edge of Fate's setting, a planet called Kepler, falls short in almost every way, too. Pathways are too long and convoluted. There are barely any fast travel points. And its bland palette of green, blue, yellow, and gray is barely even eye-catching. It certainly doesn't rival the stunning vistas of the Pale Heart or Europa. New mechanics that see you shapeshift, teleport, and manipulate the environment are forced upon you at every possible step, leading them to become frustrating and monotonous rather than interesting new ways to traverse the world. Kepler is supposedly our first foray outside of the Sol system, where the rest of Destiny has been set. I was expecting beautiful new environments, structures to marvel at, and the alien-like feeling to be at its strongest here. Instead, I'm faced with grates and buildings that I've seen 1,000 times before set among a bland and uninteresting rocky environment. The Edge of Fate, most importantly, does not pick up where The Final Shape left off. The mediocre seasonal content, although frankly very boring, is almost essential to follow if you want to understand what's going on in the newest expansion. This renders Bungie's claim that the Edge of Fate is a perfect spot for newcomers to the franchise to pick up Destiny 2 for the first time entirely untrue. It is far better now for new players than it has been in many years, but it still requires a small amount of homework before you can dive in. And I don't want homework in my video games. If you've managed to keep up with the preceding narrative content, the Edge of Fate does manage to successfully and intricately launch a new saga, one that sees you face unknown enemies and unravels stories only ever lightly hinted at before now. There's a new antagonist to contend with, and a mysterious godlike alien collective called the Nine, who are somehow the most terrifying beings in the universe now, claiming that they manufactured all preceding events for a greater purpose. Lodi, who we're introduced to for the first time in the Edge of Fate, serves as a vessel to remind you of historic events as well as setting the pace for ones yet to come. The first few hours of the main campaign are weak and fail to make an impact as various characters infodump and you're forced to use mechanics like Matter Spark, which sees you turn into a tiny ball to traverse from one area to another for no apparent reason. Those introductory hours of the Edge of Fate took me a solid day to get through because I just did not care. However, persevering through them gave way to a story that's actually far better than I was expecting. Considering the fact that I wasn't invested in Lodi, his past, or anything he had to say about how different dark matter is to the darkness. After a short while, though, he becomes a genuinely interesting character wrestling with his own confusion and inner struggle, especially considering his time-traveling history. He also provides context and gives an unexpected background to one of Destiny's most recognizable and impactful characters, which moved me almost to tears. Sure, at times the references to established lore could bewilder or alienate new players due to there simply not being the time to fully explain them. But for long-standing fans, they're a welcome nod to Destiny's history and help to explain exactly what Lodi has seen on his adventures so far. Overall, Bungie's narrative team continues to impress me, and I was surprised how invested I was in the new saga by the end of the main campaign's story. As an aside, there is almost no point in completing the campaign's legendary difficulty now that Bungie has done away with the exciting, shiny chest with a guaranteed new exotic in it as a reward. Just get it done on Brave and be done with it. There are plenty of other ways to power grind now. That power grind has always been a point of contention among Destiny players. Removing the power grind disincentivized players from logging on weekly to complete the time-locked activities that would guarantee higher power gear, but adding too much of a power grind overwhelmed new players and made the system confusing and convoluted. While the entire gear and armor system has now been reworked, and the portal has been introduced to make it easier to see which activities will promise high-level gear, I fear it's still overwhelming and confusing for less experienced players. The portal only has a small selection of activities on it, meaning you still need to navigate to the director to find specific activities to complete. Having said that, the clear labeling and new systems to identify how good your weapons or gear actually are have proven very useful so far. The introduction of armor sets, which provide a bonus for wearing 2 or 4 items from the same set, is a welcome one. Although the small handful of currently available bonuses needs expanding throughout the year ahead before it's worth spending significant amounts of time hunting down specific armor. One of the aspects that Bungie focused on promoting ahead of the Edge of Fate's launch was the new location abilities. Exclusive to Kepler, 3 new abilities are required to progress through the campaign, traverse the planet, and unlock secrets and mysteries. Matterspark is the aforementioned orb-transforming ability that feels frustrating due to the sudden lack of a satisfying camera perspective. While Mattermorph allows you to shift certain elements in the world to open up new paths, and the Relocator creates pathways through lasers or other impassable obstacles to allow you to teleport elsewhere. Occasionally, they are used in a satisfying puzzle sequence in order to progress through the main campaign. But more often, they interrupt the flow of combat in a staccato manner, forcing you to refrain from engaging with a boss whose shield must be brought down by using these abilities. The most irritating thing about these new abilities is that they're activated by specific nodes or objects that can sometimes be difficult to locate. I spent more of my time seeking those areas out than I did solving the actual puzzles, meaning the complexity of them leaves a lot to be desired. Where Destiny 2 had retained my attention in its former years had been its enemy design, but in recent years Bungie has begun to reuse enemy designs, or straight up resurrect long-deceased foes for another chance to fight them in a slightly different narrative setting. The enemies and bosses on Kepler are not memorable. There's a giant servitor guarded by lots of angry shanks. There are hundreds of thousands of fallen and Vex that I've encountered countless times before, and I can't even remember the name of the boss that I faced in the story's final encounter. There are a couple of new enemies, including the Corsair, who annoyingly dive bomb and launch rockets at you, as well as a swarm of smaller Vex enemies who disintegrate into seeking arc projectiles upon death. But there's so little time spent facing them that they're not impactful. I managed nothing more than a passing, new enemy before moving past them. They're not comparable to the introduction of enemies like the Tormentors from 2023's Lightfall, who physically grab you and lift you, helpless, into the air. If you mainline the campaign's story and get that finished, which takes around 10 hours or so, a first glance at the map shows plentiful side quests to get on with afterwards. It gives the illusion that there's plenty of content to be enjoyed when you're finished with the main narrative, but that would be an inaccurate impression. What seems to be a plethora of interesting side quests soon unfolds to show its true colors, a series of uninteresting fetch quests, where you'll be sent to scan an environment or collect an item before hearing some radio chatter about what you're looking at. To make the matter worse, every content you do in the portal is nothing more than reskin of older content. From Onslaught to Vanguard Mission to Crucible, it feels like Bungie found a way to sunset old content into its newest DLC. Beside this, in very weird way, if you want to grind for higher tier gear, Bungie new armor system is forcing you to wear only the newest gear before you can earn better gear in higher difficulty settings. Overall, the Edge of Fate is far from the worst expansion that has been released during Destiny 2's tenure. But as the direct successor to 2024's phenomenal The Final Shape, it falls short. It reuses old assets, fails to impress with its new environments and mechanics, and the main story seems to stop just as it's about to get interesting. Of course, that'll be fleshed out through the year's updates and seasonal content, but with a distinct lack of anything exciting to do now. I fear I'm on the brink of another involuntary Destiny 2 hiatus. You're spending too much time in this game trying to figure out where you need to go because your Ghost navigation system doesn't work properly. And when you do find your way, you're forced to move forward by using only the new ball mechanics. There is no Sparrow or anything else we can use to navigate it ourselves through this new zone. Therefore, give the Edge of Fate a solid 07 out of 10. If you enjoy Destiny for its lore and Amzaying gunplay, you will find your way loving this DLC. Beside that, there are just too many annoying mechanics in this DLC to make it well-deserved successor from The Final Shape. I'm your host Ashen, also known as Keishan, and thank you very much for listening to me all the way to the end. If you have any addition question, you can always reach me on the comment down below, during my live stream on Twitch, or in my Discord page. See you guys next time. One love.